So the first item that shows support and evidence for evolution, both Darwin and Lamarck talked about in their theories of evolution, and that was the fossil record. We have these impressions of past organisms from millions of years ago. They are the preserved remains of ancient organisms. They are found in layers of sedimentary rock. And the way sedimentary rock is laid down, it's laid down in consecutive layers of sediment, which is sand or silt or dust. It's a very fine ground-up rock. And organisms that die and are not eaten and their bodies aren't spread out, if they're sealed in this layer of dust and powder and sand, over time, multiple layers on top compress the body. And over millions of years, the minerals in the rock diffuse into the cells and the structure of the organism, and the calcium and other molecules of the organism diffuse out into the surrounding rocks. So you end up with an impression or a rock in the shape of the organism that was once there. So if we have a fossilized dinosaur bone, it's not a bone anymore. It's a rock. It's a rock that looks like the shape of what was there before. Bless you. It has no DNA, it has no cells, it has nothing anymore. It's just a rock. But it's got a pretty cool shape and structure to it. We can learn a lot from that. Yeah.
I thought you said that if like you find like a fossil at like the top of Mount Everest or something, I thought those were the oldest and the ones at the bottom were younger because it's like pushed up and stuff.
No, it has to do with, okay, so we've got layers. So in this rock, there are layers. Now, mountains tend to push up and twist and can flip the layers upside down. So it's not about which one's highest, right? It's the layers in which they're formed. So if there's a fossil A, B, and C, I can tell the age relative to each other if this is indeed still the top.
Okay.
I know that B, being the deepest, died and was buried well before these other layers were put into place.
Right, because it's over top of it. It took time for settlement and stuff to make those other layers.
Right.
Okay, so like if I was to find something like that all the way at the top of Mount Everest, like can you like research it just by the texture and stuff of it to tell how old it is?
You can determine from the rocks that it's embedded in, and then the rock layers on top and below it to see. And you don't have to go to the top of Mount Everest. There are fossils in Delaware. If you dig in your garden, you might find one. If you go down the C&D Canal, you'll definitely find them. Because what they do is they dig up the canal, because it gets shallower every year with the sediment that forms in there. So they scrape the bottom of the canal, it's called dredging, and they throw it up on the sides. And if you just walk up on the sides in the fields, in the dried mud that came out of the bottom, you'll find shells that are fossilized.
Is that like outside Delaware City?
Yeah, exactly outside Delaware City. Now, with geographic changes, so, you know, if a mountain, if this gets pushed up into a mountain, you know, this is layer A now, C's here, and B's here. You know, if you've got a fossil here and you've got a fossil here, erosion, you know, because you've got weathering and erosion, this might be towards the top of the mountain. You might see the fossil for A because it's exposed. But C and B, the older fossils are still buried. You know, so finding a fossil on top, you know, it's great that we can find it, but we have to do a little investigating.
Figuring out which one's older.
There's a lot of comparison, a lot of records to compare.
Nothing that we gonna do, right?
No, I've got a big box of fossils we can look at
I want to.
in the back. Yeah, I can pull them out. Actually, if we don't get to it today, Monday we have this over lunch, so that would be a good day to pull it out. I've got dinosaur fossils, shell fossils, fish fossils.
How big are they?
Like teeth and hippo, small ones. There's a misconception. Most dinosaurs were small.
Really?
Yeah. It's the big ones,
Wasn't T-Rex like
15 feet.
that's it?
That's it.
Are you serious?
So a little bit taller than this is a 12-foot ceiling. So it's a little bit taller than he would have to duck a little bit in here.
So wait, that's it. They can sit in here.
I'd still be scared of that.
I mean, okay,
Yeah.
I know. I'm just confused. I'm like, 'cause I see like the
TV shows and all that stuff. Yeah.
I went to a museum and I saw one, and it was like it looked like 50 feet tall.
Yeah. And well, here's what happens. And my wife had the same conclusion. She's like, "Wow, no, they're bigger than that." And I said, "Well, not really. They're presented to be impressive, and that's what they're there for." So when no, it's the right size, but it's on a pedestal, which is 5 feet higher than you. Its feet don't usually start until your eye level, so it's up higher, and then it's back and higher, and it sits up, and it's like growling at you and looking at you in the way they set the bones up, and they can put other smaller dinosaurs with to make it look bigger, and they do that deliberately, and it's not to fool people. I mean, that's the size of it, but they use it to make it look impressive, and also if you saw it in a museum when you were half the size, everything looks twice as big.
Everything is huge when you're little.
Yeah. But when you see comparisons against the size of a T-Rex versus a school bus or a building or standing next to a human, they're not really that much larger. Now, of course, those species don't exist today, which is why they're interesting to kids and they show them in museums. But a lot of the fossils that we find resemble species that are alive today. They're not identical, but they have a lot of similarities. So this helped Darwin and other scientists to document that life has changed over time. That we have clams and seashells, that we have variations of how they've changed through the millions of years to get where they are currently. We have lots of fossils along the way to show that the slow progressive change.
I have a question.
Yeah.
How did it go from like dinosaurs to humans?
We didn't. So there's what we'll talk about is how there's branching that happens off. Okay, so dinosaurs were over here with reptiles, right? And they died out. Well, dinosaurs did. Reptiles continued. They're alive today. Humans and birds and we're alive today. But dinosaurs became extinct, and their family line stopped.
How did they die? How you noticed that they be saying? How did they die? Because I think you guys everything.
I thought
Climate change.
it was just like
Climate change.
I was watching something.
Yeah.
They said that like there's that version of the whole like ice age period. They said like never happened, but like they would have like climate changes, and that's how the animals would die. Like certain animals would die at certain times because
They couldn't adapt.
So it's pretty much the same way that anything would die if it can't adjust to its environment.
Exactly. So what is believed, the most current evidence on the extinction of the dinosaurs is that a large meteorite or asteroid struck the Earth. We believe that to be around the end of the Jurassic period, and it hit around the Gulf of Mexico. So we know where the impact crater is, and it threw up ash and debris into the atmosphere, and that dust settled in the atmosphere, and we had dusty clouds, and it blocked a good percentage of the sunlight, and the planet got cooler. Now, dinosaurs are reptiles.
They're cold-blooded anyway, though.
Cold-blooded means that their body temperature stays most closely related to the environment. They can't keep warm. They can't shiver to get warm, and if they get too cold, their chemical processes stop working.
And their blood will freeze.
They don't freeze, but one of the things your body temperature does is help you digest your food. You don't worry about it because your body temperature is all the same. If you have a pet reptile, you have to have a heat lamp in there or a heat rock. Try to have the lights on top. Because if they don't sit in the sun and get that sun bath to warm their bodies up, the food doesn't digest in their stomach. The chemical reactions don't occur. It ferments in their stomach and it kills them. Right. And so they need to be able to go out and get warm and come back. The tortoises and the turtles I have in the greenhouse, they have a heat mat underneath the rock, so there's a hot spot in there for them to go to all winter long.
I thought they all died from tar.
Through the door?
I thought they all just got stuck in tar and died.
No. Yeah.
I never knew that.
But would they ever try to recreate a dinosaur?
Yeah, there are people trying.
They tried it.
Yeah, they're trying.
Why would
Yeah.
you wonder that?
How did what form? How do we form? Because at that time, when there are these things called mass extinctions, like when all the dinosaurs disappeared, the climate changed dramatically. Reptiles, and especially large reptiles, couldn't survive. At that time, though, there were mammals. Small mammals. Not the same diversity we have now. They were kept small because the dinosaurs were the dominant creature, and they were eating them and stepping on them and stopping them from being successful. With the dinosaurs gone, mammals being able to burrow underground and protect themselves from the colder climate and being able to control their own body temperature by shivering and staying warm like we do, were able to survive.
That's what keeps us warm and shivering?
Yeah. And because of that, they could then move and spread to other areas, and be successful in other areas. And as they spread out into other areas, they adapted to those environments and then changed over time. So that's where the whole diversity of living things kind of spread out.
That's kind of cool.
It is very cool. So that is definitely one way in which we have evidence for evolution. We see that today is the 7th? 8th. No, they didn't die immediately.
No, I know.
It
I
took.
thought it was like it hit and they were all dead. And they were
Yeah,
like,
that's what I thought.
I thought they all got stuck in cars. I really did. I thought they got stuck in
Well,
cars.
there are tar pits, and because here's why you hear a lot about the tar pits, because you went in, you never came out.
What's a tar pit?
It's like an oily. It's where oil is coming to the surface, like a pond of oil. It's really thick and gooey, and an animal that would go into it would get trapped, and they couldn't get out, so their bones got stuck there, and nothing could come and eat them, so the bones would stay. Anything that tried to come and eat them got stuck too.
So if they wanted to commit suicide, they couldn't even do it because
Well, yeah, they can't. So we have lots of bones and lots of records of organisms stuck there, and oil like that is a preservative. So there's lots of evidence of animals, and it was basically a giant fly trap, like those glue fly traps, and all the animals that went there got stuck, and the bodies just kind of accumulated in that pond, and we can go there and get lots of it. So there's a lot of evidence there. Yeah, they're horrible.
Ew.
I don't like those.
Yeah.
I hate the ones that get from the seals. They get from there.
All right.
My sister had one like at her house, and like this mouse kept getting stuck on it, like getting off of them, and they kept doing it.
Yeah.
Dude, that mouse is a will. It's like, yo, ow. I can get stuck on this.
All right. So what do we have for artificial selection and inherited variations? Well, we understand about DNA now. We know that children look like their parents, and we know why, and that children are limited based upon what their parents gave them in terms of the inherited characteristics. We know from artificial selection that if we choose the parents, we know what's going to end up in the offspring. At least we can predict the chances. So farmers realized this a while back and started selectively breeding crops. So if you want your corn to be a certain way, if you want it to be sweeter, you would take the pollen from one plant that produces sweeter corn and put that on the flowers of the corn that also produced very sweet corn. And then the next generation has the genetics from both parents for sweet corn. And you do that generation after generation after generation, and you end up getting sweeter corn.
I didn't know corn made pollen. It's a
Yeah.
starch.
Well, the plant
Well,
survives
technically,
and
isn't it
reproduces.
the fruit that has seeds?
No.
I thought they said anything with seeds
No.
is considered a fruit.
They don't have seeds, do they?
Yeah.
Like,
The
kernels and
kernels.
seeds.
So we've produced by artificial selection, by us being the filter, we chose what was beneficial for our own needs, and we selected which organisms would reproduce and which wouldn't. We acted like the filter of nature. We chose who would survive and reproduce and who would just be eaten and die, and that's the end of it. So in doing that, we've shaped and changed both plants and animals. Dogs are a very good example of this. Well, we showed that dog video where where dogs are all part of the same species. But we've, as humans, because of artificial selection and what we call selective breeding, have changed the shape of dogs dramatically. We have small dogs that we've created to have the personality and the mannerisms to hunt small rats. They're your terriers. They'll jump down a hole without thinking twice and just go at a rat, chase them out so you can kill it. Then there are dogs that have a very strong sense of connection with their ownership and a defensive role. So we have guard dogs. Yeah. Well, yeah, Rottweilers more. Pit bulls were designed to fight other pit bulls. You know, they were bred to be vicious, not so much guard dogs.
That's neat.
And there are lots of people who are sympathetic to pit bulls,
It's not their
I'm
fault.
scared of
and it's not the fault of the pit bull because that's bred into them. But you cannot defeat that. What I mean by that is you can't just love it enough that you can get 200 years of breeding out of it. So I know a family who had pit bulls, and they loved them, and they loved the dogs, and they were great. And then when they had kids, they still loved the dogs. Like, oh, our dogs are fine, they're great. Okay? Until the baby pulled on the dog's ear when the dog wasn't aware of it. The dog turned around and bit the kid in the face because that's their instinct. Okay? And now they don't have pit bulls anymore. In fact, they don't have any dogs. But you have to realize that if that was a Labrador Retriever,
It wouldn't happen.
it wouldn't have happened. Right? Labrador Retrievers and Golden Retrievers, those big,
They big soft.
softy dogs, that's their personality as part of what they've been bred for. They've been bred as hunting and companion dogs. A little kid can run up, jump on the dog, pull its tail, poke it in the eye, and the dog's going to go and roll away. Not going to bite.
Is there any exceptions? I know there's bad pit bulls like soft.
Oh yeah, they're great. I mean, the puppies are cute and they can be trained and they're intelligent, but the dog is bred to have a short temper and violent outbursts. Now, we can undo it, but we have to breed them with something other than a pit bull. We've got to get those genes in there. We've got to get more variety in there. We need to get other things in there. But as soon as you do that, it's not a pit bull anymore. Then it's a mix. And if
stuff like that couldn't
Guess that's what my dog is.
oh yeah, behavior can be passed. Absolutely, sure. You can breed any two dogs together, but here's the thing. If you do that, right? If you do that, again, we look at genetics. You increase the chance of having a docile dog, like 50% or more. But then it's not a pit bull anymore. It's a mutt. It's a blend of those two dogs. And that's not what people want. They want purebred dogs. They want a dog that looks tough and looks mean. And just you have to get dogs for
What
what
about my cat?
how they fit.
Well, he died. But he was like, he's only like 6 months, and he's like this big for him to be so small. And my nephew would always he would throw him. Like my nephew's 1.
Cats are more tolerant, but
He
they'll
used to sit there and just grab his tail and pull at his feet, and all you could do is just look at him like, "Can you stop?"
yeah. And cats will usually,
But if I do
with
it,
their
I get
attitude,
bit.
they'll get away.
But if I do it, I get bit.
That means he has a better temperament and he's sick of you.
Like even if my mom do it too, like I think it's because my mom said it's because he knows he's a baby, because he's a baby and he's a baby. It's like he knows what he can and cannot
Look
do.
at you.
Right.
I guess.
It's like
Yeah.
spring.
But we have to remember that cats have never specifically been bred for the purpose of cage fighting.
But they're so cute.
Right? And there are mean cats. This is another reason why you guys have known, like, there's some rap stars and some music people who get really rich really quick and aren't all that smart. They're gifted and they have talent, but still. No, but they'll go and get like a big cat. They'll get like a tiger or something as a pet. Not to mention that it costs like $200 a day to feed them and meat alone. But there's like, oh, I had it since it was a kitten, and this. No, it will still attack you. And there are many cases of people who've devoted their lives to taking care of animals like this. I mean, you look at there was a show, Secret, Roy, and who are those two guys? They did the whole, yeah, Roy and Seagrams or something.
Yeah.
Siegfried and Roy. You know, they spent their entire lives working with these animals.
And then they
And
attack somebody.
here they are on stage, and one of them, the cat just reacts with his instinct that it's been bred to as a big cat. It's what it does. And mauls him, it bites him in the neck and damages his spine, and now the guy's paralyzed, and but he had 45 years of experience working with this animal, and they had one bad day. There's always that factor. You had a question.
I would be so limited.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right. Yeah, they will adapt to their environments, but they are limited based on their genetics. So, for example, and this is a really good analogy. In today's world of fast information and texting and typing and all that, it would be great if you had 6 fingers that all worked. That is a trait in humans, polydactyly, having 6 fingers. It's a dominant trait. But you can't get it unless your parents had it to give to you. So
I ain't never met nobody with 6 fingers.
it's dominant. Now, no matter how much you think it's going to benefit you, you can't get that because it's not part of the genetics you were given. It's part of the population. It's out there. And those who have it can pass it. It's usually on the lower hand. It's like an extra pinky. And there's variations in terms of how big it is, how small it is. Some have muscles and nerves, but it's not fully functioning. Some is just a little nub. Most often, if somebody has it, they cut it off at birth. So you never know until you marry such a person and have babies. And you're like, oh my God, what's that? And they're like, oh, I forgot to tell you. Yeah, that kind of runs in my family. Yeah.
So, like, I want to ask something.
Yeah.
So you saying for like dogs and stuff, you can breed crazy and all this other stuff, right?
Based upon, what you...
Based on genetics and stuff,
Yeah.
whatever. Like humans, like I have a temper, my mom has a temper. Do I get it from her? Or is that just who I am?
No, it's...
That's genetic too?
yeah.
I didn't even,
There's-
I didn't even, I had like
There's a lot of components that are affected by environment as well. So there are many things that your genes don't determine everything about you, but they set the stage. And your environment determines what you do with that. And I mentioned before, you can have the genetics for alcoholism. Your body can be predisposed to becoming addicted to alcohol. But you won't do that because you have to have alcohol in your environment to become addicted to it. So that's where that ties into. All right. So, nature, right? In artificial selection, even in artificial selection, nature provides the variations. So, mutations, changes in DNA, create the differences in organisms that we have selected from. So, farmers selected organisms with desirable variations and bred them together, to the point where today our milking cows, our dairy cows, produce on average 15 gallons of milk a day. Now, that's impressive for any mammal, but it's also impressive when you realize that they don't have to have been pregnant to start producing milk, which is something other mammals need. We've selected and bred cattle to produce milk without needing to become pregnant first, and to produce milk indefinitely without needing to go through the hormonal cycles of being pregnant, not being pregnant, being pregnant. But a lot of it's bred in as well. The ability, the triggers could be hormone induced.
So like you can have a cow that only makes sour cream?
No. It's a product of milk. Now, naturally, the milk that a mammal produces is related to how many offspring it has. So a cow would produce milk only enough to feed one baby. They only have one baby at a time. Baby cows are big. So we have bred cows, selecting cows that produce more milk together to get upwards of like 15, 13 gallons of milk a day. That's so much milk that they have to eat constantly to take in the energy to produce the milk, and they have to be milked at least twice or 3 times a day or they will die.
And are they going to get tired from being
Because their udders will fill up. They'll get compacted and they'll just overfill and they'll get infected. Because they can't just squirt the milk out. They can't just release the milk. The milk has to be drawn out. There's actually a pumping mechanism that mimics the suckling where you have you ever seen? Do you ever see the old-fashioned way? They just don't go squish, squish, squish. They actually pull down.
You gotta pull it down.
Right. So you've got to literally milk the milk out of the cow. That's why they call it milking. So there's machines that do it. That have suction hoses and all that to do it. But you have to do that 2 times a day at least, or the cow's health will suffer. They are completely dependent upon us, as are most of our farm animals.
Love us or they hate us?
Now, I don't think they love or hate. Now, artificial selection has produced corn. Wild corn is called teosinte. Looks like this. Teosinte. That's what the Indians ate. That is what they served at the first Thanksgiving.
Say word.
This stuff over here. Not the corn we have today.
So we should
It was
eat
a
that
different grain. They're all messed up. So, through selective breeding for the traits we want, we ended up with the corn we have today. It's significantly different. Now, you may have seen wild mustard growing in the air. Little yellow flowers. The moths and butterflies love them. Through the selective breeding of wild mustard, farmers have created cauliflower, broccoli, cabbage, kale, and kohlrabi.
What the freak is a kohlrabi?
I don't know. I've seen them. I haven't eaten them, though. Now, all of these are parts of this plant that have been bred to emphasize. So this is a curl of leaves. It's been bred to have lots of leaves produced very close together. This was bred for the male part of the flower.
How did they get Brussels sprouts?
Cauliflower is the female part of the flower, overemphasized.
Really?
Yeah, so all the genes for this are here, but it's bred to have certain types. If you go walking in the woods, which you probably, if there's any hikers out there, you will never, ever, ever in your entire life, out in nature, trip over some broccoli. It doesn't grow anywhere other than a farm.
It can't.
It doesn't. It's not natural. Farmers made it by selective breeding.
Oh, so
We
I
made
can go
cauliflower.
in my backyard and- I can go in my backyard?
You could, but you have to plant the seeds. It's not something that you're just going to stumble upon and be like, oh my God, that's some wild broccoli. How long's that been growing here?
Wild broccoli tonight.
It doesn't happen that way. You can go out and find wild apples and wild berries, and there's no wild corn. Wild corn is teosinte. Teosinte still exists.
Those two types.
Oh, we make half five
Yeah.
Teosinte?
No, it's out there. But you can't find this.
Why are they so
Now,
small?
granted, I will tell you, if you do hike in the woods back here, you may find a wild, an errant corn plant growing somewhere, because they do reproduce from seeds. So you may have found a deer that ate the corn, because deer eat the corn up here, and then it pooped out the seeds, and then it grew somewhere other than where the farmer wanted it. You know, that happens. I've seen that. But you're never going to find broccoli and those things.
Do you hike a lot?
Yeah. I like being out there.
You hike in the valley over there?
Oh, yeah.
Nice place. I saw him at the mall. His wife would places.
Yes, we shop. All right, so I already mentioned the cows. We have hens now that can lay 260 eggs a year. Again, we have bred these egg-laying birds to lay eggs without ever having sex. That's not something birds do.
Oh, they do? Oh, never mind.
Birds don't make eggs, invest all that time, energy, and effort into an egg that has no chick in it. We have bred them to do this because we find eggs tasty.
Eggs, one time, like this happened once in a lifetime. I cracked eggs and two came out. Like that's never happened.
Into what came out?
Two yolks came out.
2 yolks?
I was like,
It only happened to you once? You gotta eat more eggs.
Yeah, well, like I was like, all right,
Double
I'll
yolkers
eat
are-
3 eggs, and I was
They're
like,
about 1 in 1,000.
I'm so lucky.
So that's pretty good odds.
Are you happy when you get it or yeah?
I'm so lucky.
I was more impressed as a kid. I was more impressed as a kid.
So, like, isn't that white thing that might start to grow off of it? Isn't that what the baby was supposed to be?
No,
What is that?
protein.
So good at like the white thing? No,
That's not polite. No, I understand what you mean. In the egg whites, there's like a little spiral or twist of something that's bright white. Okay, it's albumin,
I've never seen double yolk.
and that's the protein of egg white.
That's what you're supposed to eat
That is the egg white. Now, what happens is it can twist up,
and kill the baby.
and the protein changes shape. But it's doing that in the egg, and you tend to get this little ribbon of it inside, and that's a little white squiggly thing. Sometimes there's little dots of red in the egg, and that's all fine. It's not the remains or the pre-development of a chick. The eggs that you get in your refrigerator have never seen a rooster.
So wait, what is the
They've
yolk?
never been
What does the
fertilized.
yolk look like?
The yolk is the energy storage that would feed. It's the fat and amino acids that would feed a chick if there was one in there. But there's not.
Oh,
They keep the roosters on a completely separate farm.
So what do they do with roosters? Do we eat roosters?
This well, we're getting there. All right. So cows can produce up to 15 gallons of milk a day. I already said that. 15 gallons a day. No. Again, these things are not natural. We have made them by our own selective efforts. We followed the rules, right? We didn't take something that wasn't already there, but we chose what's successful.
Why is milk so expensive that it can produce so much?
Because it costs a lot.
Because it has a limited amount of time.
Like it goes bad in like a week. Sometimes.
You want the
How do they make soy milk?
soybeans.
you want the shocker? You want the shocker?
Soybean, yeah.
Again, it's the
Use your head on this one.
how many of you drink organic milk? Okay.
I don't have a choice.
You don't drink organic milk
Yes, I do. I don't have a choice.
because you said it just expires within a week.
I'm lactose intolerant. I don't drink that milk my mom does.
If you're lactose intolerant, you can't drink milk at all.
I can. I got to drink lactate milk or soy milk.
Yeah, it's not organic.
That's not.
No. Now,
Is it milk disgusting, like without going through all the processes?
no.
It tastes just like the milk that you buy.
One of the things that you'll realize is that they will sell milk at Target. They sell like reduced fat, 1% skim milk, all that good stuff. They sell what they call regular milk, and then they sell organic milk. Organic milk comes from cows that have not been fed antibiotics, have not been injected with hormones, and don't have the those extra steps in there.
Can't that make you sick?
Now, the reason they inject and do all that to the cows is to get as much milk out of them as possible. It's mass production. In mass production, you run the risk of contaminating the milk, getting E. coli in the milk or other bacteria, things that can make you sick. So they dose up the animal, they put antibiotics in its food, so the cow is sterile and the milk they produce is sterile. That's the normal milk.
You drink organic milk?
Organic milk, because it hasn't come from cows that are sterile, doesn't have all those hormones and nasty stuff in them. The law states that you have to heat the milk to a higher temperature. You have to pasteurize it at a higher temperature to kill more bacteria. So what happens, and this is one of the interesting components, is when you heat milk like that, it knocks the flavor down a little bit. But regular milk starts at a lower flavor. So when you heat it, it drops a little bit. Organic milk starts at a much better flavor,
And you just knock
and then it's heated more, but you still end up with a much better flavor. But here's the kick. Here's the kicker. Some people buy it just for the flavor, but what you've done is you've pasteurized it longer, which means there's less bacteria in it than the store-bought milk. Look at the expiration date. Normal milk lasts about a week and a half. So you look at the expiration date when you buy it. Does your mom always tell you that? Yeah. Check the date, because it always goes bad. The expiration date on organic milk is 3 months.
Are you serious?
Yes.
Say word. I want some organic milk.
It does cost a little bit more, but
it's worth it.
I will buy 6 gallons of milk at one time. And it's in, because I got it at Costco, it's in half-gallon containers.
You can like freeze it.
Half a gallon at a time. You open it and use it before it goes bad. Within 3 months, I've gone through all 6 gallons. I've never thrown out any milk.
Are you serious?
So we end up saving money in the end. We're drinking better milk, better products, taste better, cost less money.
You have to heat
No, just open it and drink it.
Oh, heat it for you?
That's pasteurization. They do that in the plant before they put it in the factory. I'm still going to school. I read. I'm curious and I read. If you remember back